Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. Video gambling or sweepstakes machines. We break down the difference as some older people push for regulation. An investigative report reveals the barriers exonerees face in acquiring certificates of innocence. And a new biography about Chicago's own Pope Leo 1 year into his papacy. First off tonight, Illinois public health officials say a Winnebago County person is being tested for hantavirus. The Illinois Department of Public Health says the case is not related to the deadly outbreak aboard the cruise ship MV Hondius. Instead, they believe the person may have been infected with the North American strain of the virus spread through rodent droppings and is not spread from person to person. IDPH says the risk for Illinoisans is very low. The state has had 7 positive cases since 1993, with the most recent in March 2025. The city of Chicago is again in the running to host the Democratic National Convention, this time in 2028. DNC leadership and the Technical Advisory Group arrived today at the United Center for a site visit where they will assess the logistics as well as the committee's partnership with the city, community, and business leaders and, of course, quote, democratic values. The site visit is on the heels of the city hosting the most recent DNC less than 2 years ago in 2024, generating more than $371 million in economic impact. The party announced in March that the city was a finalist along with Atlanta, Boston, Denver, and Philadelphia. A $730 million budget deficit for Chicago public schools means some schools will lose staff starting this summer. Principals got a look at their annual budgets today and learned how deep the cuts could be. CPS has not provided specific numbers on the expected number of staff cuts, but will cap the number of teacher losses at 4 for elementary schools and 6 for high schools. But class size limits will not change. Funding for assistant principals at the smallest schools will also be reduced. School CEO Macklin King points to a lack of state and federal funding, but also decreasing student enrollment, down by 45,000 students since the year 2019. For more on how the Chicago Teachers Union is responding to the proposed cuts, you can visit our website. A planned phase-out of Chicago's tipped minimum wage could be delayed 2 years under a new deal. So City Council's Workforce Development Committee unanimously advanced the deal after restaurant and bar owners shared concerns over rising costs. If approved by the full council, the measure would mean that Chicago's tipped workers would not get city-ordered wage increases this year or next. A spokesperson for Mayor Brandon Johnson says he supports the plan. In March, alderpeople had voted to block the phase-out of the tipped minimum wage, but Mayor Johnson vetoed it. Full council is expected to vote on this new measure next week. Up next, Chicago lawmakers move to get rid of sweepstakes machines. We explain what those are right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
A push to ban so-called sweepstakes machines over the objections of Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration is one step away from final approval. Our Heather Sharon joins us now with more. Heather, so break it down for us. First, what is the difference between trying your luck on a video poker machine and a sweepstakes machine?
Well, sweepstakes machines popped up across Chicago more than a decade ago, and not just in bars or restaurants, but also in laundromats and convenience stores, gas stations. And essentially, these machines allow people to try their luck, but they don't require a payment up front, and you don't typically get cash. If you win, you get a ticket that you can redeem for merchandise or a gift card or something other than cash, usually. Now, that's different than, of course, than a slot machine or a poker machine where you got to pay to play. And the city council says maybe we don't want these machines across our city anymore.
Why are they saying that? Why are they saying maybe we should ban these machines?
Well, they have long operated in sort of a gray zone. They are not technically legal, but they are not technically illegal either. So that means that the city and the state and the county can't tax these machines. It's also increasingly problematic if Chicago is going to welcome video gaming into bars and restaurants. That means that these gray zone machines will compete against those legal machines that, oh yeah, the state and the city will be sure to get their cut of once they start popping up in bars and restaurants.
And of course, they're the legal machines, the very legal machines that are coming online with the casino that's in the works. But Mayor Brandon Johnson's administration, he opposes that ban. Tell us why.
Well, a lot of these sweepstake machines are on the south and the west side, which means that the businesses that rely on these machines to draw more foot traffic in could be hardest hit. And they're concerned that the city does not have the capacity to enforce this ban, with repeated violations could lead to the loss of people's business licenses. So it's not clear the city can really enforce this ban, and the mayor says they need to do an equity analysis about who it would hurt the most.
Okay, so then what's next?
Well, this ban is up for vote, the full city council next week. Just 2 alder people can block that vote, so it's likely that maybe it will stretch, but we'll have to see what the fate of these machines, along with video gambling machines in Chicago in the weeks to come.
Always a full slate at City Council.
Indeed.
Next week, it sounds like it. Heather Sharon will likely be there.
Yes.
Thank you, as always.
Thanks, Brandis.
And our thanks to Spin It Up Laundry in Irving Park for letting us stop by and get video of those machines. You can read Heather's full story on our website. It is all at wttw.com/news. A new investigation reveals that county prosecutors are challenging efforts by wrongfully convicted individuals to clear their names and secure compensation. Certificates of innocence created by Illinois lawmakers in 2008 were designed to help exonerees access state compensation and rebuild their lives with better access to jobs and housing. Under Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke, the office has reportedly opposed nearly 4 out of every 5 requests for a certificate. Joining us are Dan Hinkle, senior reporter at Injustice Watch. It's a nonprofit newsroom focused on the Cook County court system and author of the investigation. Lila Waz-Piper, a staff attorney at the Exoneration Project. And Roosevelt Miles, who was wrongfully convicted of murder in 1996 and received his certificate of innocence in 2024. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Dan Hinkle, tell us about your investigation. What did you find?
When we dug into the court record, what we found was just a night and day change between how former State's Attorney Kim Foxx handled these things and how Eileen O'Neill Burke handles them. Kim Foxx intervened and objected to these certificates pretty rarely. I think we found 1 out of 4 cases for people exonerated in her second term, second 4-year term, and Eileen O'Neill Burke has objected to nearly all of them, 4 out of 5 in a year and a half. And to sort of put it in perspective, I think Eileen O'Neill Burke has objected to more in a year and a half than Kim Foxx objected to during her entire second term.
Wow, okay. Lila, what's the process for individuals in Cook County when they are seeking a certificate of innocence?
Absolutely. So it comes after someone has had their conviction vacated, usually through a post-conviction hearing or through a Section 214.01 petition. And then we file what's called a certificate of innocence. It's a petition. It's usually accompanied by exhibits demonstrating their innocence, oftentimes the records from the proceedings below. And typically the goal in these is to get them to a hearing. The point is to have that evidence in front of a judge and have them determine whether our client meets the burden to establish that they're entitled to a certificate of innocence. What's been happening right now with this administration is delay after delay and frivolous motion after frivolous motion. What this should look like is getting a hearing in front of a judge with our evidence. What it actually looks like is the line state's attorneys filing frivolous motions motions and asking for continuances to harass and delay these cases.
Okay. And for everyone at home, line attorneys, not lying.
Lying.
Yes, you said lying. Yes, I just want to make sure people don't think that that's what you're saying. Miles, you received your certificate of innocence in 2024 after being wrongfully convicted of murder in '96. What was that process like for you to receive that certificate?
It was like an Oscar, you know, to prove and for people to know that you are actually innocent. And to get that, it was overwhelming. I still hold a copy of it up in my office at home so I can look at it and remind me of what I went through to receive this, because the state opposed me and I ended up receiving mine.
So that means, and you received it in 2024, so this means that you received it when Kim Foxx was still serving
Yes.
as Cook County State's attorney.
Yes, correct.
Dan, what approach has Eileen O'Neill Burke's office taken on whether to oppose a certificate of innocence? What are the grounds?
Well, they are opposing nearly all of them as the result, but Eileen O'Neill Burke has, declined my request to speak with her for, a year and a half now. So I would love to find out what she thinks about this, and open invite to talk. But she has spoken publicly about it, where she told the Tribune in 2025 that she felt that certificates of innocence were for people who had what she called irrefutable evidence of their innocence, right? And she cited DNA. Anyone who knows anything about how the court system works knows that DNA is pretty rare in these cases, so you're not going to give out a lot of certificates of innocence if that's the standard. But that's her thinking. I know that her assistants have also gone into court and generally alleged on the record that they say, hey, these folks can't prove their innocence, and so we're not going to assent to the certificate just because they were exonerated. They don't acknowledge that means the person is innocent.
Right, because she has said that irrefutable proof such as DNA, is that really a fair standard? Because they were not convicted with DNA.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who would say that is not a fair standard, and that once again, if you make that your standard, you're just not going to give any of these out.
Lila, in a petition for a certificate of innocence, the burden of proof, as Eileen O'Neill Burke has said, falls on the person who has been convicted and, of course, now exonerated. What are some examples of exonerees who have met the bar where they've, met that burden of proof?
Certainly. I would use actually an example of one that's pending right now that they're fighting, because I think our client will be able to meet that burden. For example, we have a case in which we had a very expansive hearing. Multiple witnesses testified, including the witness who put our client in prison originally, who was coerced by the police when he was just 15 years old. He courageously came forward 30 years later, took the stand, and told the judge in no uncertain terms it was not our client. And he told the judge, I only implicated Mr. Williams in this case because Guevara punched me repeatedly until I did so. So in my mind, that's irrefutable evidence. You have the very witness who put him in prison coming forward to say it was not that person. And so that's the type of irrefutable evidence that the state's attorney has right now, and she's still fighting these cases. So it's a disingenuous statement to say that they're looking for irrefutable evidence.
Miles, what evidence was it that ultimately helped you secure your certificate?
A witness that was coerced by a detective. And she came forward and told everybody that he didn't do it. He didn't do it. But they refused to listen to her. So she came to court and signed an affidavit and said that it wasn't me.
Dan, I think your reporting also shows that's often the case, right? A witness, a previous witness, recanting their statement or changing their statement.
Yeah, recanting witnesses are the basis of a lot of wrongful conviction cases in Cook County at this point.
So the state's attorney's office, they did send a statement to WTTW. I think it's familiar to the one in your report. It says, quote, our process is modeled after the Illinois Attorney General's office and reflects a responsible approach requiring defendants to elect one avenue of review to ensure their claims are addressed efficiently and effectively. Dan, what's your reaction to that? Because it appears to be suggesting that some wrongfully convicted individuals are not following the right steps. They're not navigating the process correctly. There's a post-conviction step they're supposed to be taking first.
Well, I'll say that we sought comment. Well, first we asked for an interview from the state's attorney herself, and were declined in that regard. Asked to speak to an assistant, declined in that regard. Sent a number of detailed questions, and instead received this general statement that, frankly, I'm not really completely able to interpret in full. I think some of it refers more broadly to the process for the conviction integrity unit, rather than being specific to the question of certificates of innocence.
Lila, give us a sense of how long some of these petitions can take.
They should be resolved within months, especially when there's extremely developed records. In my cases, I have multiple petitions that I filed in June and July of 2025, and we haven't even had a hearing yet. And the judges are fed up with this approach. Delaying for delay's purpose doesn't do anything to further justice in our city.
Miles, you were exonerated in 2022, but it took another 2 years for you to get your certificate of innocence. You said that period was especially difficult. What was that like for you?
It was hard, based on trying to find work, just live my life and be recognized as an innocent individual. Because I got exonerated, people that look at you still think you're guilty. Until the certificate of innocence, then you can show them, yeah, this is me. I was wrongly convicted. I am innocent. So with the state, I got a lot to say, but I'm gonna hold my mind, hold my mouth.
You're among friends, you can say it here.
Well, I got my certificate of innocence in 2024. It has not been addressed by Illinois State Police yet. I got expunged 5 months ago. I got expungement for my case in five months ago. Illinois State Police has not complied to the judge's order. You got 60 days. They're in contempt of court right now because they haven't complied to it. So now I sit here, exonerated, certificate of innocence, and expunged. But I still sit here with this on my record.
So it's still showing up on your record. Okay, we'd love to hear from the Illinois State Police about that as well. That's something that we can work on. Dan, before we run out of time, I think about 30 seconds left, what does it mean, both materially and mentally for folks who are seeking and receive that certificate?
Well, there's the practical things that come with it, as Roosevelt mentioned. The expungement is important to people because they want the case out of the system. There's some modest compensation from the state. I think the thing that most people talk about, I talked to a lot of guys for this story who told me with great feeling and great emotion that this is more than just the practical things that it brings, right? That it's about getting the state to admit that it was wrong, that it made a mistake, and that they are innocent.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to all of you for joining us. Dan Hinkle, nice work on your reporting. Lila Waz-Piper, Roosevelt Miles, thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.
Up next, Pope Leo XIV is 1 year into his papacy. A new book provides a glimpse into his life. It has been just over a year since white smoke billowed out of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City announcing the election of a new pope. The world soon learned that Robert Prevost was chosen, whose journey to the papacy started here in Chicago. Now, a new biography looks at Pope Leo XIV's life, his influences, and his first months leading the Roman Catholic Church. Joining us is Elise Ann Allen, author of the biography and Rome correspondent for the Catholic news outlet Crux. Elise, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be with you.
So, what is your relationship with the Pope? How do you know him?
Well, I actually met Bishop Robert Prevost back in 2018. I was a reporter then. I was traveling to Peru to look into some stories down there and had asked for some interviews, and he was one of the interviews that I got. I had a one-on-one meeting with him at the time. So we had that connection, me as a reporter and him as a bishop in Peru at the time. And then, stayed in touch mildly after that for various things if I had a question about something, a story I was working on. And he always tried to be as helpful as he could. And then when Pope Francis called him to Rome in 2023, there simply are not that many Americans, living and working inside the Vatican. So it was just an occasion to, to get back in touch with a fellow countryman, a fellow American, in the Vatican. And so we just established more of a rapport. My husband and I invited him eventually over to dinner in October 2024, a few months before Francis passed away. So you could say that we were starting to, to become friends a bit, I guess, before he was elected, and just to our shock and,
And then he
our
becomes the
great
Pope.
surprise.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he became the Pope, and it was
then he
sort of
became
a
the
surreal
Pope.
moment.
Robert
Yeah.
Prevost, so we know that he grew up in the south suburbs, later attended Catholic Theological Union in Hyde Park. What did those who knew him during those times have to say about him?
Everybody I spoke to for the biography had similar things to say. Number one, that he was incredibly bright. He was somebody that was seen very much as intellectually gifted, as a great student. Just speaking with people who knew him at the time, and also listening to things that other people had said. Everybody described him as sort of a straight A student who was very involved. He was sort of not. He came across as shy, but he wasn't one to sit out. He participated in everything, was very active in sort of the community life, in school, but also at CTU, but he was also described as somebody who is very special. Even classmates of his, who were in the minor seminary with him in 2000 and, when he was about 12 or 13 years old, described him as very special, very pious. They said even, a young guy from South Chicago, that age, you don't necessarily think about humility and, piousness being like words that would describe a young man, in that context at that age, but they all described him that way, as being somebody that there's clearly something special about him, even then.
So since then, he's been elected the Pope. What does that mean for the direction of the Catholic Church?
I think it's an exciting time. Obviously, this is a historic moment. He is the first pope from the United States. I think the world is paying attention to the papacy in a way that they have not before. I think it makes it more relevant just because of the place the United States occupies on the global stage. You can't ignore it. And he's somebody, he told me in our conversations, like other popes in the past, when they'd speak out about global affairs or something that was relevant to the United States, they'd say, okay, maybe he just doesn't understand. Maybe there's a miscommunication. He's somebody, he told me, is like, they can't say that I don't understand what I'm talking about now. So I think there's a general understanding that when he speaks out, he knows very much what he's saying. He understands the context of the United States, but not only, also of the world, because of course he spent so much time in Peru as a missionary, but also traveling the world as sort of the superior general of his religious order, the Augustinians. He really traveled the entire world to visit community houses all over, in Africa and Asia especially. So he's somebody that understands very much the United States and its context and its needs and its challenges, but also how to relate that to the rest of the world. So I think this is really a historic moment, and whatever he's going to say, I think is going to be seen as increasingly relevant and really just sort of extremely relevant, given his own background and the context in which we're in.
Pope Leo will likely appoint a successor to Cardinal Blaise Cupich here in Chicago in some years. Are you seeing any patterns in the types of appointments that Pope Leo is making and that he's made so far?
This is a good question. Everybody wants to know what is he going to do in terms of his appointments, because it drives so much the direction, right, of the Catholic Church and the sort of the tone that's coming out of, the bishop's messages. I think so far he's made a few key appointments. We look at his appointment to New York, of course. Bishop Hicks there was a very clear indication, and he started making other little appointments here and there. And what we see is an emphasis on bishops who are sort of middle of the road guys. He doesn't seem to appoint bishops who are really far left or far right, if we want to use those categories. Pope Leo is somebody that, number one, because of his own experience abroad, can't easily be pegged into those categories that we so often use. He thinks very much in a different way. So the guys that he's appointing are very much sort of center, middle of the road personalities, not seen as particularly polar in either direction. But we're also seeing people with some immigrant background as well. He just appointed, he appointed not long ago a bishop with Vietnamese background. He also just appointed, a bishop who had been an undocumented migrant when he first arrived in the United States and then became regularized. So he's sending subtle messages, with the kind of pastor that he wants, people who understand, and pastors who understand understand the issues and the nuances, the complications, but also the needs of some of the big topics of the day. Obviously, he's somebody that's advocated very much on behalf of migrants, and their rights while defending, the right of a state to, in a country to maintain their borders. So he wants people to understand the nuances of that debate and can lead the church in that discussion.
Elise, a few seconds left. Prior to becoming Pope, Pope Leo used Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter. How is his relationship with technology influencing his papacy?
This is a very good question. It is one of the reasons why I initially titled my biography of him. The original version was in Spanish, and part of the subtitle was I called him a missionary of the 21st century, because he is the first pope that is really a digital native, and he has used apps like this. So I think he's very much the tech pope. He said artificial intelligence is going to be a huge priority of his. It's a huge talking point that he wants to open up a discussion on. So I think he really is going to advance, the conversation about these issues, and he knows what he's talking about because he did use all these apps and he does use them, I think, himself, Duolingo even. So he's somebody that's going to very much lead the discussion in this.
And we know that he speaks several languages, obviously. Elise and Alan, congrats on the book. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Again, the book is called Pope Leo XIV, The Biography by Elise and Alan. And that's our show for this Tuesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports educational initiatives in the legal profession.